Hello again, everybody. This is Steve coming to you with another video about my Earthfleet universe. I thought this one I did the last one with the Brayburn Society, kind of touched on the basics of that. You can learn more about that in my wiki and up at my website, which is realmsofimagination.net. But this is the other half of the society, which is, the military arm. And the military arm is funny because if the society had their way, Earthfleet wouldn't exist because they don't care about, the military stuff and all of that. Earthfleet basically came about because Earth needed someone to defend them because there was people after them, despite us being just some nobody in the middle of the galaxy. Because it's one of those things where we're a nobody, but a bunch of bad people made us a somebody as a stepping stone to power, and so we kind of ended up on the short end of that stick. Hence the need for Earthfleet to defend, to defend Sol and Earth and all of that stuff. I covered basically where Earthfleet came from up to the point of the Titan class. So I'm going to kind of pick up from that point and move forward with that. Basically, as I stated before, it was just the society. Then one part of the society, science core, and the guys who do all of the building and creating and stuff, they created a starship to go do some exploring in space. Well, that went out, didn't come back for 3 months. When it comes back, it's a whole other ship. Then that basically opens this huge Pandora's box, and the society's like, oh crud. And and I covered this before. I'm just kind of doing a quick rehash of this, but they go, oh crud, well, we got to now defend our planet because we just realized we're not alone in the galaxy. And it's not just that we're not alone in the galaxy. There's a lot of other people out there, other races, stuff like that. So a lot of really big giants. So they throw up 4 ships, which really, a destroyer would probably eat them for breakfast. I think it's funny thinking about the destroyer. I was having trouble yesterday, or when I did the last video. I was talking about the Sergenius. I noticed they called it a frigate at one point. It's like, no, that's a corvette. So if I mess up and I call something that it's not, just cut me some slack. I'm not a good public speaker, so I kind of struggle at this stuff. I get stuff kind of crossed in my brain, which again is why I have my wiki, because the wiki helps me remember things. It helps me to keep all of my facts straight. Like I say, my wiki is essentially a gigantic notepad for me, with public access so that you guys can come by and read the notepad anytime you want to. And it's also all the items that I've canonized from my various books and series and stuff. Anyhow, like going back, like I say, rehashing this, there was the Destiny class, the 4 ships of that. Then after reverse engineering enough stuff, they built the Stellar class, which was again a corvette, which, given the limited numbers of the Brayburn Society, that was the best they could do, was a group of 16 corvettes. Well, a little bit later down the road came the Titan class. Well, the problem with the Titan class is it's a Gagfon destroyer. So, and it has a maximum crew complement of 900, minimum crew requirement of 250. So she's a big boy. Normal is about 450 to 600. Oops, I just noticed I had a typo there. Let me fix that real quick. So that's going to happen too. If you see those, let me know about those. I try to get everything, but I don't, I'm one man and this is a big honkin' wiki. Just big friggin' wiki. So I'm going to miss stuff. But anyways, along comes the Titan class. It needs between 450 to 600 people to crew this ship. To properly crew this ship. Earthfleet, well, the Society Space Corps kind of looked at that and went, oh crud, we don't have the people. And the Gagfon kind of knew that when they came in, because when the ships first arrived, they and this isn't on the wiki, this is kind of in my background notes, but basically when the ships arrived, the Geek Von were like, hey, we got a great gift for you, and the Society Space Corps is like, we don't have enough people to crew those ships. Not anywhere near enough. So what the Geek Von did was they also, the idea of taking on the Yavlik class, which was renamed the Titan class, because the first ship in that new group of ships was called the Titan, so it was renamed the Titan class. So it was a hand-me-down ship that got a rename. And one of the first things that the Society did was they started figuring out ways. Well, they had to go in and learn the whole ship. So the Geek Von spent a lot of time helping them to get to learn the ship. So basically, they went through I guess the best equivalent would be like a Starfleet Academy, sort of. It wasn't actually Starfleet Academy, but kind of the equivalent to it, where, you're taking some backwater group of Minutemen, essentially, who aren't a professional military. They're doing their best at being one, but as far as spaceships go, they're really not much more than kind of this backwater fleet of civilians who are doing their best to try to create an effective military defense force. Well, the Geek Von knew this, and they applauded Earth for doing what it did and trying its best. But when the Yavliks showed up, they're like, okay, now we're coming in with the big stick. Now we need to run you through basic training. We need to run you through officer academy and so forth like that. So they gave them actual professional military training. This is the ship. This is how you respond in this situation. Okay, you've taken this kind of damage. How do you respond? How do you how do you handle this particular type of situation? They taught them tactics. They gave them military structure. They literally took the Society Space Corps and helped create Earthfleet. It was, and the Geek Von didn't. It wasn't, here's our system, you have to use it. It was, here's the proper way to do this. You figure out how you need to integrate this into your society. Because they knew that their system didn't necessarily work for everybody. So what they did was they taught the fundamentals, and then the Society and the Space Corps figured out how to make this uniquely human, uniquely Earth. And the Geek Von worked with them on that. They were, like I said, they were very patient. They worked with them on it. They built up Earthfleet. And they actually helped them build Earthfleet because like I say, they put everybody through basic training. They put everybody through officer academy. They created the kind of people you need to run these kind of ships. And in the process, Earthfleet started staffing up because, like I said, they didn't have a lot of ships or a lot of crew to crew their ships, which then again, if you look at the size of the crews across the 20 different ships that they had, the 16 Stellar and the 4 Destiny class, they did not have a lot of people in the fleet. So they had to kind of staff up as they're doing this, and the Geek Von were gracious enough to, bring their own people in there, and even though they dropped these ships off, they also left these ships fully crewed with their own people. So they basically, they took these active duty ships, took them out of active duty, decommissioned them, transferred them to Earth, but they also brought the crews with them, because the crews already knew these ships. They knew them inside and out. They would eat, breathe, and live these ships. So they knew these things inside and out. They knew how to respond. Every situation, they would have run them through practice tactical sessions and everything. Basically, like I said, they put them through basic training. Is pretty much what they did. And then as the newly formed Earthfleet took shape and started building their staff numbers, they were able to gradually start decrewing these ships of Geek Von, and it was humans that went back in and filled in. They filled in or backfilled those positions that were freed up when the Geek Von came out of there. And as certain Geek Von weren't needed, they were transferred over out of there to other places, and Earth took over. So when the Geek Von were completely done, the Earth had these ships fully staffed, they couldn't fully staff them. They were working with skeleton crews, because that's all the people they could get together. But it was enough that Geek Von figured, okay, this will be good. What was it? I'm trying to think of who it was. Oh, the Junod. The Junod come in. There's 16 of these things floating in orbit. Junod are going to be like, no, we're out. Not worth it to come in here. So even if they're thinly staffed and skeleton crews, just seeing 16 Yavliks, 16 Yavlik class destroyers sitting in orbit around Earth is just going to be enough to make the Junod go, nope. So that in itself was a deterrent that was beneficial to Earth. Well, after the Geek Von left, one of the first things that the Society did was they went through those ships and they automated the heck out of those ships so that they could take it from a minimum crew of 250 to a standard crew of 35, because they just didn't have the people at the time. Well, I shouldn't say a standard crew of 35, a minimum crew of 35, standard crew of 250. So basically your skeleton crew became your normal staffing at that point because they automated the heck out of everything. Which, the Geek Von, if they knew about that, would have kind of frowned on that because, the Geek Von are the mindset that we need personnel. We need people hands-on to make this, make sure this stuff works right. And the Society and the freshly born Earthfleet were like, we need to automate as much as possible and prioritize our crew members into high value areas. And and again, it was a personnel limitation, so they were finding ways to automate all of this stuff. Anyways, once that was done, then the Society or Earthfleet kind of stood on its own. Oops, there we go. And some of that's covered in here, because I kind of cover those details, and then you from there you get other classes of ships and stuff that's uniquely Earthfleet. Some of them, though, this is funny. The Titan class is not the only class of ship that Earthfleet was given by the Geek Von. There were a few others that they inherited from the Geek Von. But there's a lot of them that they actually built, like the Corbin class, the Neptune class, Hercules class, and others like that. One of the best ones. This one is a ship that was built entirely by Earthfleet, and it was a Dreadnought class. And the funny part about it was, up to this point, most of the stuff that Earthfleet had built. And I really shouldn't say Earthfleet built it. It was the Society shipyards and stuff like that built it. So the Society built the ships for Earthfleet, but it was Earthfleet who requested them and had them designed, stuff like that. So it's kind of like, here's what we want. Can you build this for us? And the shipyards would say, yeah, we can do that for you. Well, the Romano class was one of those ships. It was a Dreadnought because that was back when they still fought in big, their mindset was still the big ship mindset, because that's what everybody else had. They had the big ships, and they had the big ships with lots of firepower and the big cannon decks and all of that kind of stuff. So that was still their mindset. They hadn't started thinking small like the ship killers and stuff. The Sergenius was really the first one where they stepped away from that big ship mindset and into small but powerful, so that they could produce a lot more. It was easier to staff them because they didn't have 300, 400, 500 people or more on a single ship. You had 9 guys on a ship, and it was a ship that was comparable in firepower to a cruiser. So, you don't have the staffing of a cruiser, but you had the firepower of a cruiser. But anyways, the Romano is a funny one because there's a lot of them that, the Geek Von looked at him and said, yeah, you did pretty good at it. We like it and everything. It's not as powerful as our ships, but we like it. You guys did a good job. But then they brought, the Society brought out, or gave the Romano class to Earthfleet, and that was the first ship that Earthfleet built that actually terrified the Geek-Von because of how incredible this ship was. I mean, it would take a beating. It was designed to be hugely survivable. This thing could just take a massive beating. It was like gun overload, which, the fact that this thing was like overpowered and overgunned for a dreadnought, it was more, it was classified as a dreadnought, but it was a super dread. It was one of those ships that if something absolutely positively had to die, you called the Romano class. Like I say, they only built like 100 of them, which, it pales in comparison to the thousands and thousands of dreads and super dreads that the Geek-Von has. But as far as that one ship was concerned, that was the first ship that the Geek-Von was actually scared of. They were like, "Yeah, we're glad they're our allies." So, it was a good ship, very durable ship. And in Homeworld, you have the Spartacus, that is it's a Romano class, and even in its stripped down state, it beat the snot out of another starship that was beating up Earthfleet. It was the only ship that was in the entirety of Sol that could go up against this one starship, the Predicator. And you'll learn more about that. I'm not going to tell you more about that. You can learn about it in there. And also why it was the only ship in all of Sol space that could go up against it. But even in a stripped down state, because they were getting it ready to go into the museum, so they had to demilitarize it. And they hadn't completely demilitarized it yet. And even in a stripped down state, it still beat the pants off the Predicator. And the Predicator was no pushover. That was a pretty powerful ship. And the Romano, the Spartacus kicked his butt. Barely, but it kicked his butt. So, let's see. I'm trying to think what else I would want to tell you guys. And the thing about this is I like to do a lot of real world parallels. Like, you might get something right on one try, and the next try you get something wrong. Like they built the Sergenius class. They loved the Sergenius class, and they thought, let's improve on it. So they built the Samurai class, which is about 20% larger and more powerful. It's more powerful, it's faster, it's larger. Problem is, bigger and faster also means slower and less agile. And they quickly figured that out. They realized, okay, the Samurai class is a good one to keep. It's not like it's a bad ship, but we didn't get what we were after. In fact, we went backwards. So we improved in some areas, and we lost things in other areas. So it's kind of like, if you want to do a comparison, it's the maneuverability of an F-22 versus like an I think like a B-1's a little too extreme, but I'm trying to think of a good modern comparison. It's but you got one that's like fast and maneuverable and stuff, but it's not as powerful as its larger cousin, and the smaller one's and it's flying all over the place, and the big goes it's bigger, it's got more firepower, and it's more durable, but it's not as maneuverable. So it gains some things, loses others. So they tried again, and they created the Pegasus class. They went further backwards with that one. The Pegasus class, they built 20 of them, sent them out to try them out, see how they would work, and canceled the project because they realized the Pegasus was actually less durable, less maneuverable, more powerful, less maneuverable, less durable than the Samurai class. So they canceled the project and scrapped the Pegasus class. Same thing with the Skipjack. The Skipjack was kind of a specialty ship. Basically, it was a huge torpedo platform. That was its primary. It was a skirmish ship. It was designed to go out, chuck a whole bunch of torpedoes at people, make stuff die, and go home. That was its primary job. They found out that didn't work. And the core weapon system for the ship that was supposed to make it so terrifying and so effective was quickly found to be flawed, and there was other problems, so they said, screw it. And out of that, they learned, there was different things that they learned and they tried, and eventually they came up with the Raven and the Wolfpack class, which one of the things that they learned with the issues they had with the Sergenius and the Samurai class, trying to, well, like I said, the Samurai was supposed to replace the Sergenius. It didn't. Well, now they had kind of a, not a dichotomy. I try to think of a better word for it, but basically, symbiosis. That's what I'm looking for. They had these two ships. It was a symbiosis between the two of them, where like the strengths of one made up for the weaknesses of the other, but it wasn't a perfect symbiosis because it wasn't meant to be. It wasn't originally created that way. It's just they figured out afterwards that, hey, we can create the symbiosis between these two. We can fly them in pairs. The Sergenius and the Samurai class they didn't fly in pairs. They flew in formations of 3 with a lead ship and 2 supporting ships. That was the most effective that was the most effective formation for them to fly in and get the maximum effect. The Raven and the Wolfpack, those were built at the same time, and they were built with that symbiosis in mind. So where the Raven excels, the Wolfpack doesn't, and vice versa. And the two of them basically, each one makes up for the other one's weaknesses, and they basically create this unstoppable weapons package because they're perfectly balanced with each other. Like I say, and each one makes up for the other one's weakness, or each one's strength makes up for the other one's weaknesses. So as long as they're working as a team, they're just pretty much unstoppable. And they're a lot faster. They're a lot more powerful. They solve the problem of ramping up the power and the size, because they're a little bit large. If I remember correctly, they're either the same size or a little bit larger than the Samurai class, but they are way more powerful. They're way faster. They nailed down the maneuverability problems, so that's resolved. And then one of the other big wins they got about the same time was the Mythos class. Now, the Mythos is an interesting one. I mean, and the thing here, too, I'm not going to show you the Raven and Wolfpack, because if you've seen the Sergenius, you've seen these two. It's basically the same body form across all the ships, just different sizes, different weapons, configurations, and stuff. The Mythos is this big thing. This is a ship that has, let me see, it's a crew of 137 of the maximum of 250. What makes this one interesting, and this is a big boy here, which is funny because for a while there, the fleet used the Clayton Doctrine, which was lots of little but very, very powerful ships. Sergenius class, Samurai class. They tried the Pegasus, that failed. Then they replaced the Sergenius and Samurai class with the Raven and Wolfpack class once they had proven themselves viable ships, and actually proved themselves to be far superior ships. They ran circles around the Sergenius and Samurai class. So as they were being built, they were slowly replacing Sergenius and Samurai class starships. And the funny thing about the Sergenius class is because the Samurai couldn't completely replace them, the shipyards up until the Raven and Wolfpack came around, the shipyards were still building Sergenius class, even though the Samurai was newer and more powerful. Because, like I say, the Samurai couldn't completely replace the Sergenius, and the two of them needed each other. So they just kept building those ships. They didn't build the big battleships and stuff, because in the Battle of the Oort Perimeter, which is where the Clayton Doctrine comes from, in the Battle of the Oort Perimeter, their big capital ships, their traditional battleships and destroyers and stuff like that, did a very poor showing. You could read more about the Battle of the Oort Perimeter, or you can just read Oort Perimeter, the book itself, and learn about that and kind of what happened there. But yeah, the big capital ships of the fleet just made a very poor showing. But the ship killers came out of there smelling like roses. But anyways, not to get too much into detail on that. That battle spawned the Clayton Doctrine, which basically said small, fast, and powerful, which is pretty much the ship killers, the Sergenius and the Samurai. They kept, like I said, shipyards kept producing them, kept expanding. They were both expanding the fleet and replacing older ships that had just worn out. And some ships, depending on how much they were used, what they were used for, what they went through, some ships got a Gen 2 refit. Sergenius was one of them, even though the Sergenius was the very first of the ship killers and the oldest of the ship killers in the fleet. She got a refit because she had, for most of her life, up until Mike Clayton, the Grand Admiral, an admiral at the time, and you'll see that in Weaver's Forge, up until he picked that up and took that as his. Well, no, he wasn't an admiral; he was a captain. But anyways, when he became admiral, he took the Sergenius as his flagship because he liked the ship so much. But the Sergenius, when they did their refit, one of the things that the fleet does in any of those refits is they tear this thing down to the space frame. They just take everything out of it, literally gut this thing to the space frame, and rebuild it entirely with all new tech. They go through the space frame, make sure everything's fine with that. This ship goes through a complete and total overhaul. And when it comes out, it's almost a brand new ship. So it's basically a new ship built on the bones of the old one. So, anyways, those ships. Well, the Samurai, I don't believe, and I had to double check my notes, but I don't believe the Samurai ever got a Gen 2 refit, because by the time it would have been ready for a Gen 2 refit, the Raven and Wolfpack were on the scene, so it wouldn't have been necessary, because they, by that point in time, the Raven and Wolfpack were so superior to the Samurai that the fleet just, decommissioned it. They just retired it. So the Sergenius was the only one of the two ship killers that that initially came out that got a complete refit, complete overhaul, refit, all that kind of stuff. And what do I think of? Yeah, and anyways, the Mythos is kind of funny, because the Mythos, it's classified as a battleship, but it's actually a dreadnought, and one heck of a dreadnought at that. As you can already see by its big size, this thing is like crazy automated. The amount of automation on this thing is just insane. And on top of that, which is something that came out of the Clayton Doctrine and the Battle of the Oort Perimeter, was that the fleet started using a lot of android personnel, a lot of androids, a lot of AIs, stuff like that, to help maintain the ship. So the ship, like I say, the ship has a lot of artificial intelligence running it, maintaining it, watching over systems, doing repairs, things like that. There's a lot of droids running around there, and it's not just humanoid droids. It's, you've got spiders, you've got various mechas that are running around doing various maintenance, run through the tunnels, stuff like that. And like I say, it's a big ship, but it's maintained very easily by a small crew of 137. And one of the other things about this ship is, you look at it and go, oh, okay, well, it's a battleship that has kind of the firepower of a dreadnought. Yeah, but you got to remember, when you're talking about Earthfleet, Mr. Backwater Minuteman Fleet, you're taught, well, professional army, but it's a very small military. They have to get the most out of the least. And the thing about the Mythos is, where the ship killers were designed to take on cruisers and win, this thing is so insanely overpowered and overgunned and everything that it's designed to take on a fleet of 250 ships. So yeah, it's designed, instead of 1-to-1 with a cruiser, it's 1-to-1 with a fleet. So this thing is essentially, like I say, a super dread. This is designed to kill a lot of stuff and kill it fast. And one of the things you have to understand is, if you look at the breakdown of a typical fleet in this universe, and I'll go back to that just so you can see that, because I mentioned it before. There it is. This is basically a typical fleet. Well, even typical armada, because the way the structure works is you have 5 ships, if I remember correctly. 5 ships is a squadron. 10, I think 10 squadrons is a wing, or something like that. But it's like the smallest unit is 5 ships, and a fleet itself is 250 ships, and an armada is 10 fleets. So I have to go look that up again, exactly what the breakdown is. But out of that 250 ships, you're going to have, no, that's what it is. It's 5 is a squadron. Then you have the 25 ships, which is 5 squadrons, which is a wing, and then you have 10 of them, which is a fleet. So that's kind of how the breakdown works, and it's more for strategy on paper than actual practical application, because there's a lot of times you will see where you don't have them operating in big fleets unless it's some kind of wartime effort or they need to join the firepower together. What they usually do is they'll spread their ships out. So like you might have an armada spread out across 4, 5, 6 sectors. You got all 2,500 ships and they're just spread way out. And it's, I think the broadest they spread them is if you jump at maximum warp, you're within no more than 15 minutes of any one ship. So like, for example, if Earthfleet calls for reinforcements from the Geik Von, there's at least one ship within 15 minutes at any point in time of soul space. So, and that way you get the most out of your fleets and being able to cover more space and everything. So, like I said, they operate individually, everything from Corvette on up. Corvettes usually tend to operate more in systems, so like you're going to see those a lot as like policing forces in solar systems and stuff. Frigates, some of the bigger, more important systems, you'll see like in a normal situation you might see 3 or 4 Corvettes in a system. In a bigger system you might see 2 or 3 frigates, 2 or 3 frigates and 9 to 12 corvettes. Once you get to destroyer, now you're more out into the open. You're out operating in open space. That's not like local defense, because corvettes and frigates tend to maintain local defense because they're such small ships. So like I say, they tend to stay more in system, and then the bigger destroyers and cruisers and stuff tend to be out in the larger galaxy. Also, the destroyer is the most numerous of all the ships in the majority of the fleets, especially the Geik Von, because the destroyer is the workhorse ship. That's the one that does the heavy lifting. Once you get to cruiser, battle cruiser, dreadnought, super dread, those are the big shiny sticks. Those are the guys you call when something absolutely positively has to die, especially the dreads. Sorry, neighbor just brought his Harley in. But yeah, Corvette's small, usually 2 to 3 decks. Sergenius is 3 decks. Like I say, it's about 20% larger than an Airbus 380. It's 3 decks, crew of 9. A lot of Geik Von Corvettes range from 35 to 150 in crew, so they're not big ships, but they're more heavily staffed than a typical Earthfleet ship is. As a general rule of thumb, and this doesn't apply always, but usually when you're working with formations, if you have a frigate, you're going to have 2 to 4 corvettes screening it. Usually if you're on the minimum side, you're going to have 2 corvettes screening it. On the maximum side, you're going to have 4. 3 is also seen a lot as a typical middle ground. So you'll have 3 corvettes to every frigate. You'll have 3 frigates to every destroyer. And then destroyers, you'll have 3 of those to every cruiser, and 3 cruisers to every battleship, and so forth. And a lot of times that's because the firepower is like, for a battleship is 3 to 1 on a cruiser, which is 3 to 1 on a destroyer, and so on. And super dreads, the super dreads are basically kind of like what the Mythos is. They're the big ugly stick you use to just beat someone into submission. I mean, you got to haul out a super dread. You got something big you're messing with, something that really needs that firepower. Now, the funny thing is, if you have a normal fleet, you're either going to have a single dread, you might have 2 dreads and a super dread. Some of the configurations have been dread and super dread, where you have 1 of each. It's very rare to see a fleet with just a super dread but no dread to back it up. Because usually when you're talking like the ship configurations, you're going to have 2 dreads screening on a super dread, because the super dread can hold its own, but they're there more to thin out the battle cruisers and the battleships and stuff that are coming in, so they kind of run screening operations on the super dreads. One other thing that is not listed in here is there's a lot of different specialty ships. There's cannon ships where the ship is basically, the whole ship is built around the gun. It's kind of like an A-10, where the whole aircraft is built around that Gatling gun. In this case, the gunships, the whole ship is built around that gun. That gun is everything to that ship, and that gun can kill a lot of stuff, including super dreads. So, but they're also slow. They're clumsy. They're expensive. So you don't see them a lot. They're more used in that special situation where they're actually more practical than other ships, which is not very often, but they're good for attacking planets and destroying large sections of the surface. I mean, you fire one of those things at a planet, and you just skip right past the normal fleet bombardment. And you just take out whole continents. They have carriers. Fighters are not a big thing in the Earthfleet universe. They do have them. The Trigarians love them. The Angolorians do not. The Yandians think they're a waste of time. The Varnok do use them. Not excessively. The Varnok use them more in local policing actions. Planet level stuff with the corvettes and the frigates. You're typically not gonna see them in the big fleet engagements or exchanges or anything like that. Because, they're these tiny, itty-bitty little things flying around out there like a bunch of gnats. Battleship will just eat those things for breakfast. So they're used more like going after pirates, policing operations, contraband, little things like that. So, yeah, those are out there. I'm trying to think of some of the other specialty type ships. But yeah, there's a lot of little ships that may or may not be part of a normal fleet fleet formation. Some of those ships actually move from fleet to fleet as the fleets have need of them. If they don't have need of them, they go park them somewhere until they're needed, and then they bring them in. So, but these right here are the backbone of most fleets throughout the galaxy. Earthfleet kind of follows this, or I should say, they kind of followed it. Once the ship killers came on the scene and the Clayton Doctrine kicked in, that structure right there pretty much went away, and Earthfleet was looking more at what is our most practical setup for our fleets and our formations and stuff like that. Now, going back here to the Mythos class, I'll go back into this picture because I got to show you this. This is really cool. This right here is one of two sets of hangars. And the reason that they have these hangars is this ship can park 24 ship killers in it, 4 per bay, 3 bays. And they can literally park 4. Let's see. Yeah, they can park 24 of them. A normal complement is 12. They'll park 2 per bay, 6 on each side. They can park 24. If they turn around, they land 2 on the bottom, and then they can actually dock to the top of the landing bay. They just like flip over and attach themselves to the ceiling. So now you're carrying 24. There's also a bunch of starship hardpoints out here in among the gunnery, which you can't see it really in this picture here. All the gunnery, which is a thing of Earthfleet, is if your guns aren't in use and you don't need them out, they're parked in under the armor. One, it's less intimidating when you come up on somebody because you don't want to scare them to the point where they poop all over their flight deck. And you also don't get all of the wear and tear from space debris and gases and stuff like that. They're easier to maintain because when they're pulled inside, you can actually send guys in instead of having to send them out in spacesuits. You can pressurize the service base or the parking base for these cannons, and get the guys in there, and they can actually, in a normal atmosphere, normal dungarees and clothes and stuff like that, they can go in and actually work on the guns. So that's a benefit. Even the Sergenius has that. The Sergenius has 1 turret top, 1 turret bottom. Samurai has that. Raven and Wolfpack has that. Pegasus had that. The idea behind that is they have what's called fluidic armor, and I'll explain that in a little bit. Really interesting armor technology, but the idea was if something happens and the fluidic armor can't transform, you still want at least something out so you can defend yourself. So they always had at least 1 turret available, top and bottom, to help defend the ship. Otherwise, you're kind of screwed. But yeah, they can actually take on 48 total ships docked, like 24 docked internally and then another 24 on the external. So you got 48 ship killers that can back this thing up. And the ship killers are just tiny compared to this thing. So they're more a screening force, and the the Mythos is the big stick. The Mythos does the heavy lifting. The ship killers are kind of the screening force. In Dark Earth, they're used for away missions where they send them out across a wide area to scout and research and stuff like that. So they have a lot of different uses. You can also park shuttlecraft in here, although they don't have a lot of shuttlecraft, and the shuttlecraft actually operate out of different bays. And this ship itself is actually... the Sergenius and the Samurai and the Pegasus all use what was called coaxial drive, and I'm going to explain those drive systems in a different video. This one uses a linear hyperdrive. A quick overview of what a linear hyperdrive is. It's a regular hyperdrive, but it's if you ever watch Stargate, their flight or their FTL system was a linear hyperdrive, and the reason they're called that is because they don't have like a power curve like a normal engine would. Theirs is a straight line. The more power you put in, the faster you go. The only limit you have is how much stress your ship can take and how much energy you can pump into the nacelles and not have them blow up. Because they have pressure limitations and energy flow limitations and stuff like that. So it's basically how much can your ship handle and how much can you shove in there. So, that's the Mythos class. That was one of their... that was one of their wins as far as starships go, because they had a bunch of failures, and then they had others like that. Then they had ones like the Mythos that were failures. There's Clayton Doctrine, so you can read on that one on there. But anyways, that's kind of an overview of Earthfleet. I'm also getting real close to 45 minutes again, so I need to stop. But you can go in here and you can learn a bunch of stuff. You can learn about Mike Clayton. Like I say, I kind of glossed over the ships. I'm going to cover... Get out of the way. I can cover this more if you guys would like, but this is the officer ranks. I can do another video and basically cover officer and enlisted ranks and how they work and different things like that as far as like the personnel structure of the fleet. The rank structure and the command structure is built kind of along the lines of the U.S. Navy. That was my model for this. The only difference is you have, like the Navy has 1, 2, 3, and a 4-star admiral. 5-star in wartime. Otherwise, 4 stars the highest you're going to get. In here, you have Commodore, Rear, Vice, Admiral. Then you have Vice Grand Admiral and Grand Admiral. These are the guys that lead everything. So these are the top 2 dogs. But again, I can cover that more in another video. I'm just kind of glossing over it right now for you. And again, you can go out there and read up on all of this and see the different things about the fleet and the ranks and kind of how it works, some of the inner structure, inner workings, and stuff like that, which again, I'll cover in other videos, but I'm just kind of introducing you to them right now. So anyways, thank you again, everybody. I'll catch you in the next video, and we'll keep going over this universe and all the cool stuff that's in it. So, thanks.